of crafted Jeff a certain way. At some point during the run, and people are writing to you that Abed is he's got Asperger's, clearly. You find yourself somehow taking an Asperger's test on the interwebs and finding out that maybe you're closer to Abed than Jeff.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. A bad way of putting it would be that because it's such a hip illness. Like I didn't mean to diagnose myself with Asperger's. That's a terrible thing to do.
It's the new autism.
Yeah, exactly. It's the new gay. It's the new black. It's hey, I got Asperger's. I think that's a very accurate way of saying it. Is that what happened was, the character of Abed was being well responded to by the kind of call it the spectrum community. I don't know. The audience. I was curious about it, and I was sort of Googling around, and I found these forums and chat rooms and things where people with the so-called affliction were really responding to this character. And I say so-called affliction because I think one of the most interesting things about it is that with spectrum disorders is that there's a lot of people out there who don't consider it an affliction because the definition of an affliction should be that it somehow inhibits you. Whereas actually the inhibition is on the part of other people, and that's why these are people who they're different, and they have a what's called a disorder by a mob of doctors who are basing their standard of perfection on a bell curve.
And they're in the pockets of the pharmaceuticals, anyways.
Sure, fuck those guys. Yeah, I mean, let's get real.
Yeah.
But so I was like, okay, these are cool people. These are my kind of people because they're nerdy and they traditionally they love them some Spock and some R2-D2 and some Mork from Ork and any character that you come up with that has 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And that is weird, and people are trying to tell them you need to be more like normal people, and they're like, I wish I could, but I can't. Data from Star Trek, The Next Generation. What I noticed is that they really liked this Abed character, and they considered him a refreshing portrayal of someone with their so-called disorder because he one of the most important things about him to them was that he didn't have Pinocchio syndrome. He didn't wish, he wasn't like I really if only I could have an emotion chip and be like all the normal boys and girls. He was what he was, and he was okay with it, and it was up to other people to figure out how to deal with him, and they really liked that a lot. I something about it just rang with me, and I was like, I don't want to let these people down ever. They don't get a lot of role models on TV, and I know how important that is. But what happened is, alongside of that, the interesting personal thing that happened, I think, is that I didn't want to disappoint these Aspies who were responding so well to this character. So I also didn't want to diagnose him on camera. I mean, it's incredibly difficult to diagnose adult Asperger's. It can take forever. It can take a decade because you can recognize it in children. But what happens is this is a disorder that it's a functional thing. Like those people aren't handicapped. They're just different. And they learn to blend. The same way if there's something wrong with your leg and you kind of like you start walking differently, like they just become like these weird like personalities that cope in all these different ways. You can't tell one from it. There's no similarity among them.
Adapt to similarity.
They're just it's and so it becomes like this thing where it's like, well, is it a disorder at all, or are we just diagnosing being weird, being exceptional? A lot of that happen. They talk about that in their communities on the internet, and as I said, I just didn't want to do wrong by these people, and so I researched this thing just to make sure I never did something like have Abed say he loves pickles, and then it's like everybody knows that nobody with any form of mild autism or any spectrum disorder, you can't stand any briny food or cucumber-based product. Now he blew it. That was the impulse. So it's like, just make sure you got this right. You got a handle on what this is. And so I researched it, and then it just started sounding awful familiar. But I do think that, I mean, we've all done this before. If you Google bump on my neck cancer,
right.
Because you got a bump on your neck, you're going to find out the bump on your neck is cancer, whether it is or isn't. The internet is real good for that. Yeah. So I know I'm not normal, but I think the important thing is that like as you put it, I think it's the best way to put it. I started to discover that I had a lot more in common with this with Abed than I did with Jeff. Jeff was originally me. The idea that the sexy version of me, there's the idea that, as I said before, like, oh, if I talk long enough, I can make anything right or wrong. I have this like Hulk mouth that I just activate, and I just like mesmerize people, and I have to learn how to, even though that makes me not believe in God or not believe in right or wrong and not believe in love, I'm going to learn all these things because I'm with these knuckleheads. And that, you can see the transition happening in the Chicken Fingers episode. In the first season, it's a conversation between Jeff and Abed in the kitchen at the end of the episode, and they're talking, and they make a deal that Jeff characterizes as, well, let's be like Knight Rider, like meaning that Abed can be the car and he can be the David Hasselhoff. It's like, let's help each other. Like you be smart and weird, and I'll be human. Like you help me, like point me in the right direction, and I'll do the talking. And Abed misinterprets it, and it's a real hoot. But it's in that moment, in that conversation, that the transition happens.
Right.
Because I don't walk away from that scene identifying with the sexy Irish guy anymore. I am now the weird Indian kid after that episode. So, and then second season started, and I was kind of like him the whole time.
But Abed sort of represented a lot of what you were describing in terms of where you were at when you met Rob, what your interests were. That part of you that has evolved, and he represented the Trojan horse of getting you inside the network sitcom world. That part of this story is absolutely fan-fucking-tastic. No, truly, it is. It allowed you to thrive creatively, and also to sort of transition away from the fantasy of being Han Solo to celebrating
being R2-D2.
No, but I mean being the far more complex,
right.
And also, by the way, Abed's crazy charming in his way.
Well, of course, yeah. Everybody wants to, yeah. I mean, he doesn't have self-esteem issues. Like, that's the interesting thing about him, is that he likes being the way he is. He's just frustrated with his alienation. He loves people. This is the thing that I think is the most important, profound thing. And please, somebody tweet in or call or correct me if I'm wrong. But out of all, there are disorders, afflictions, whatever you call them, head injuries that can cause people to like eating poop. There are people who sleep with corpses. There are people who get turned on by women stepping on their face. There are people who want to fuck teddy bears. There are people who eat dirt. There are people who murder children. There is no such thing. There's no twisting of the mind possible that has ever resulted in any person wanting to be alone. They're liking solitude. You take hardcore rapists, serial killers, the homicidal maniacs, and you put them in solitary confinement, and they immediately start losing their mind. They beg and cry to be put around other people. They'll rape and kill them, but they want the company. We are a social mammal, to taken to such extremes that there's nothing like it on Earth. So you can kind of see similarities in chimps and things, but even they don't get along quite as well. They don't have this sort of natural instinct for cooperation, compassion. Yeah. The things that we think are fake conceits, they're genetic, like they're in us. We are different because we want each other to succeed, and we don't do it all the time, but we We are known to sacrifice ourselves for each other, and it's amazing. So you take a character like Abed and you go, you know what's really cool about this is that he's not just some dick. Like every single character on that show, the one thing they have in common is that they'd rather be with each other than be alone. And Abed is his condition is he's just afraid. Kids that grow up with Asperger's, the most common link we can find with them is frustration, fear of alienation, like fear of being outcast, because we all feel that. They grow up with it. Their personalities are formed in this crucible of constantly, they just have every day, 5 times a day, somebody points at them and says, "What are you doing?" And they find out that their pants are around their ankles, and you're not supposed to do that when you pee. You're supposed to only pull them down enough to put your wiener out. It's some social custom that they didn't pick up on or understand, and they were the last person to realize that they've been doing it wrong the whole time. And they feel humiliation, they feel terror, because there's nothing worse you can do to a human being than threaten them with kicking them out. Actually,
well, the question of what are you doing? You're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. Those sort of messages have been sent by family members, either patriarch or matriarch or siblings, as a way to either judge or compete. So I think there's this inherent social disorder that is in all of us because of that upbringing of someone along the way of alleged authoritative plateaus.
Well, we all
saying,
had
what
to,
the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, we all had to not step in traffic and not touch hot stoves. We all have to learn that you can't call a door an elephant, otherwise people won't know what the fuck you're talking about. So we often characterize being told what to do as a bad thing, but we want our parents to approve of us, and they're the agents of all of us, Asperger's or not, we all experience that primal humiliation of somebody going, "What the fuck, man? What are you doing?" But
not just doing something incorrectly. You know what I mean? I think there's something now inherent, not now, but always inherent in the social environment where somewhere along the way, someone in your life, or several people, either competitiveness at school, right. Now it's this huge bully movement or acknowledgement right. of a forever lasting bully movement. Someone in a position of alleged power or self-imposed power saying, "You're an idiot."
Yeah, usually a mob. If it's an individual person, it's just somebody who's been vested with the authority of the mob.
Right.
It's a popular kid or a bully that everyone fears, so right. They have the backing.
How many people you know though that do better walking into a social situation after a drink or something that relaxes their crack?
Yeah. How many people? Yeah.
I mean, how high is that percentage?
Yeah.
So there's a form of human instinct. You say the Asperger's come up with frustration basically every day about being accepted. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm venturing into that's in human nature already.
Yeah, definitely. Right. There are people that we call kleptomaniacs, but we all know what it feels like to want to steal something. There are people that we call stutterers, but we've all been tongue-tied. So a character like Abed, or the thing that they represent is the part of us. All of us feel like weirdos. We all are kept in line by our terror of being outcast. It's the force that pushes us together. We don't want to be that last person left out in the rain. We know we'll die.